I want to be a righteous husband that lays my life down for you. I want to be a righteous wife that loves you and respects you like Jesus. And rather than fulfilling the formula of our past, we're going to turn our marriage over to God, and we're going to celebrate our differences. We're going to heal each other. Somebody say amen. We were looking for someone like us, but we were wired by God to find someone who is different. And we judge each other, reject each other, or then we just tolerate each other. Women, can't live with them, can't live without them. So we just tolerate each other, judgmentally, but we tolerate each other. But you only heal when you wake up one morning and say, thank God I married you. Thank God God gave me to you. I didn't realize, when I was praying, I just didn't realize how sovereign God was. When I look back on Karen and the way that I met her, it was so sovereign. I was unsaved. I wasn't praying for nothing. But God knew Jimmy Evans in his mother's womb. And he had a plan. And he brought me the woman that I needed. And I rejected her before I understood our differences and the fact that she is my aider. Karen and I love each other. We get along because we respect each other. We celebrate our differences. And I'm saying to you, God wired you to find your compatible opposite. You're sitting next to him right now. Receive them, celebrate them. Don't reject each other. Doesn't mean you don't have to talk things out. Doesn't mean that, the thermostat doesn't need to go up. Just means you're different. Here's the second sovereign subconscious decision that you make. Listen to this one now. To find a committed partner to walk me back through my past so I can heal. Most of us, when we're dating, we would say this: I want to get as far away from my past as I can get. Now, some people are different. Some people come out of great homes, and you're wanting to fulfill the legacy of your family or the lineage of your family. But for a lot of us, we're trying to get away. Here's what research proves about the subconscious mind. When we're dating, we are attracted to someone who supplies what was lacking in our childhood, listen, and reminds us of what wounded us in our past so we can resolve it. This is research. This is massive research. This isn't light research. Research proves that when we're looking for a spouse, we are attracted to someone who supplies to us what was lacking in our childhood and who reminds us of what wounded us so that we can walk back through our past and be healed. Dr. Harville Hendricks and Ruth LaKelly Hunt are married. Dr. Harville Hendricks was professor of marriage and family at SMU. And during the time that he was professor there, he divorced. He later remarried Ruth LaKelly Hunt. She had also been divorced. And Harville, one day I think they were talking, as the way they write in their book. They wrote a book called Getting the Love You Want, a very good book. And his wife looked at him one day and said, if you're the marriage guy, then why did you divorce? And he said, I don't know. I can't answer that. So they did an 8-year research, in-depth 8-year research together. And they wanted to know the answer to that question, but here's the basic thing they were looking for. Why do couples fight? They wanted to answer the question, why do couples fight? For 8 years, they studied it, and after 8 years of research, here's what they found. We are all wounded from our past and are subconsciously looking for a spouse who has the best chance of healing us. They believe most of our fights are because we are unaware of this dynamic in the conscious realm, so we are constantly dancing around each other's wounds and are threatening each other rather than healing each other the way that we should. In marriage counseling, one of the things that I find is this: when we're fighting, typically what we're doing is we have the mask of our wounding parent on when we're fighting. Let me give you an example of this. A couple in counseling, and she was raised by a father who was a quiet recluse. And every time, so she is very, very frustrated at her husband because he won't talk and he goes away. When they have conflict, he goes away and won't engage her, which makes her even more irate. He was raised by a dominant mother who emasculated his father all the time and was verbally abusive. So now he has a wife who's dominant and verbally abusive. When she does her thing, he runs and hides, which makes her even more so. So I'm counseling them one day. I said, you do know that you're wearing her father's mask and you're wearing his mother's mask. You do know that. And when you're fighting, all you're doing is rewounding each other. So here's what I want you to do. So I'm looking at him. I said, I want you to take off the mask of a reclusive man who runs from problems. And I want you to engage your wife. And I want you to love her. What your father did was unrighteous. And what your mother did was unrighteous. And what her father did was unrighteous. You need to engage her. I looked at her and I said, you take his mother's mask off. He was wounded by a dominant mother who is verbally abusive. And every time you get mad, you put that mask on, you're rewounding him. And they looked at each other in my office. It was just like they woke up. Let me tell you what makes this dangerous, when you don't know what's going on. What makes this dangerous, and as soon as they realized what they were doing, and I said to them, you do realize that you had to marry each other. Because when you got married, you were looking for someone who would walk you back through your past, and you're doing a bang-up job. Now, you want to be healed? You want the healing journey to begin? Karen and I fought, rejected each other, mad at each other, thought we'd made a mistake until one day we started healing each other. And the way that you start healing each other is to admit that you're not well. And Karen did it first. I was not the best person in our relationship, Karen was. And Karen has a book that's called From Pain to Paradise. In her book, she chronicles our marriage. And she made me the issue. There was a big mistake. Early in our marriage, she made me the issue, and she fought with me. And, you know, my feeling was, bring it on, girl. You'll never win that fight. And one day she stopped fighting me, and she went and got in the presence of God, and she said, God, heal me. And the Lord began to heal Karen, and that began the healing journey of our marriage. Then, after we had our horrible fight and the scales fell off my eyes, I went to Karen and said, Karen, I'm not well. I'm not well. I'm wounded. And now our journey was in the conscious realm. It was no longer subconscious. It was in the conscious realm. We both admitted we had pain, and we both admitted that we needed to be healed. Here's how Karen healed me. She helped me find my emotions and link them to behavior. My father never came to one of my ball games in my life. My father was completely distant from my life and never touched me, never physically touched me growing up, never talked to me, never came to a ball game, never in any way engaged himself in my life. And Karen heard me say that one day, and she said, oh, that's why you are the way you are. I thought, well, what? Well, I said, Jimmy, that wounded you. And I thought, that didn't wound me. You know, and she said, yeah, it did. No, it didn't. I remember being in a football game. I remember looking at the sideline and fantasizing that other boys' father was my father. I didn't know how to deal. You know, as a kid, you don't know how to deal with that stuff. You know, and I'm not a crier. I'm not someone that just sits around saying, well, my daddy never touched me. But he didn't, and it hurt. But Karen feels. And Karen helped me to get in touch with my own feelings. Let me say this. Every time Karen told me how I was feeling, she was right. As soon as I allowed myself to say, is that right? The Lord would always say, that's right. And then I would start hurting. I was put in touch with the pain that I know. Let me say this. God's going to do some things for you first person. Some things he will only do through your spouse. You can't cut out the middleman. He's not going to let you say, well, I'm not going to listen to my wife, but I just wanted, me and Jesus got a good thing going. And 1 Peter 3 says, if you don't treat your wife right, your prayers will be hindered. I expected more female amens on that. Amen. I can't cut her out of the formula. God's going to heal me through the cistern if I let him. But I have to admit that I'm hurt. She was my safe place to talk. Karen, one of the things that Karen always did was let me talk. without rejecting me and judging me. She's always been my safe place, and she believed in me. Honor heals men. The greatest wound that men have is disrespect. Honor heals men. Karen honored me and respected me. And it healed the wounds in my past that were wounds of insignificance and disrespect. How I healed Karen, I gave her strength. I'm a strong man. That's my gifting. Self-assurance and command, those are my giftings. And I would speak strength to Karen. When she was full of self-hate, when she was feeling weak or insecure, I spoke strength to her and confidence to her. I committed myself to be God's partner to nourish and cherish Karen until she was everything that God made her to be. When we started marriage today, she wouldn't even come out and be in front of a camera. And she said, no, Jimmy, God's called you to do that. And I said, no, God's called us to do that. And it took so much time and energy to get her in front of a camera. It just wore me out. No, I can't do that. No, God hadn't called me to do it. No, you're called to do it. You're the talker. I'm not the talker in the family. We got her in front of that camera. Now we can't shut her up. I'm getting some major dirty looks from right now here. She's phenomenal. Karen's phenomenal. But I made her feel secure. Security heals women. The greatest wounds that happen in women's lives are because they weren't fought for. They were not cared for. A man did not stand up for them. Even a man hurt them. And when a man stands up and says, you're worth fighting for, I'll lay my life down for you. I believe in you. Karen, really, honestly, she is a lioness of God. But if you could have met her 44 years ago, you wouldn't recognize her. Look, I want to say this. I'm not saying this in a bragging way. I'm saying this because it's true. We're healed. We're just healed. It's just wonderful to wake up every day healed. We don't have any pain in our relationship. When we talk, we're not touching each other's pain. We did for years. Let me say this, we healed each other. God put you together as azards to fill in what the other was lacking. You're compatible opposites. I hope you share the same faith. I hope you share the same basic life goals and character, but you married someone opposite. You were wired by God to do that. Sovereignly and subconsciously, regardless of what you thought you were doing, you were looking for your compatible opposite. You found him. You were also looking for someone who supplied what was lacking in your childhood and reminded you of what wounded you so you could walk back through your childhood and get healed. Karen suffered a lot of verbal abuse growing up. Guess who she married? A dominant, verbally abusive man. But when I changed, the same mouth that wounded her healed her. And here's what I'm asking you to do. Here's what I'm asking you to consider as a couple. Two things, and then we're going to have our vow renewal. Celebrate your differences. God was working so much deeper than you thought when you were dating. He had to, or you would have selected the wrong person. You were looking on this level, God was looking on this level. And He brought to you an aider. And you need to embrace that and celebrate your differences. You make a great team. You make a great team. The second thing is this, you're wounded. All of us are. All of us are more messed up than we would want to admit. We come into marriage wounded. And to the degree that we come in marriage wounded, we're looking for someone who will help to heal that. And again, when you were dating, you might have thought, I'm going to get as far away as I can. You didn't do a very good job. And now every time your spouse opens their mouth, and then you have masks on. And what you're doing is you're playing a role, and it's wounding each other. Take the mask off. Stop wounding and start healing. Be the person that God made you to be. And here's what we say. Here's the way you heal each other. I'm hurting. We're hurting. Baby, I love you so much. Let's heal each other. I want to be a righteous husband that lays my life down for you. I want to be a righteous wife that loves you and respects you like Jesus. And rather than fulfilling the formula of our past, we're going to turn our marriage over to God, and we're going to celebrate our differences. We're going to heal each other. Somebody say amen.